later. So we're live. How are you, mate?
Great. Well, it's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I want to start, Martin. I just want to give you an introduction. I want people to get to know you. Perhaps some of them has seen your TED Talks or your work or even met you, but I'll give you an introduction and then we can dive in. And I've got so many questions for you tonight. So I'm sure this hour is going to go really fast. So just as an introduction to Martin, he studied neurobiology and went on to do his PhD in neuroscience at Barcelona. His thesis focused on the understanding of stress and emotions and how they affect learning and behavior. In 2012, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. While in treatment, he decided to sign up for a triathlon despite never having practiced the sport before. And he went on to found mysurvivalstory.org, which I encourage everybody to check out. It's amazing, the stories there. And it's a non-profit initiative that documents inspiring cancer survival stories around the globe with the goal to help other patients and families to cope better with the illness and its psychological side effects. What I really resonate with Martin is his belief that knowledge is overrated. And we all know what we should do, but only a concrete action is producing results. And he talks about his goal is to empower people to master their minds so they can live the life they want without losing the time they have. Now, just a background, I was so fortunate to get to know Martin. We were fellow facilitators at a very special retreat in Dubai run by Ponte-Nova. And then we touched base again over Christmas and beyond at the wonderful Phuket Cleanse. So I'm really happy now we've spent time together to call you a really great friend. And I have so much respect and admiration for your story, which I'm looking forward to share more, and obviously who you are as a person. So I welcome you, Martin. Thanks for spending your time.
Well, thanks so much. And same. I mean, what you do with your work, it's always a pleasure for me to exchange ideas and have a conversation. And it's just an inspiration for me to follow you and your work and what you do.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. I wanted to start because tonight we're talking about overcoming obstacles. And we've got some big ones at the moment for a lot of people, more than this is unprecedented what's going on in the world. And I also wanted to talk about the creation of new habits, which for me is a driving force for change. So I wanted to start just with this theme of obstacles. And I'm watching your TED Talk, and if anyone hasn't seen Martin's TED Talk, please do. We'll leave a link and we'll have access to it, but it's amazing. I really mean that. And there was a part in your TED Talk when you were diagnosed and you talked about, hey, I'm going to start the triathlon, and then you go through parts, and then you get to the day of the triathlon, and you do your swim, and you get on your bike, and you're going along on your bike, and you have this moment. And you think, oh, what have I done? What did I sign up for? And you feel the pain and probably the lactic acid, everything's building up in your body and you're feeling this pain. And you're thinking, oh my God, like I'm just on the bike. I've still got the run to go and I'm not even finished with the bike yet. And so you're in a lot of pain and you're having all these thoughts. And obviously these thoughts to say quit. And I'd like in a moment you to explain this, but what was really interesting that I'd like to start this conversation with was you said you had a moment, and the moment was you started thinking about the stories of the people that you'd met during treatment, the other patients, and you're thinking about their world and what was going on with them and each individual. And then suddenly, I mean, it wasn't just suddenly, but you're at the finish line, you made it. And I want to know, can you describe, as a neuroscientist, can you describe the process and as from your experience, what happened? What happened from you being in so much pain, shifting your attention and able to overcome this obstacle?
Well, it's a very good point that you're like putting on the table. And I see you really watched my TED Talk in detail because it's really a key moment in the whole story. And so what happened in the brain, or what happened in my brain or in my mind while I was on the bike, and I think it's not something particular to me. I think it's how we are wired and how humans are wired is when you're confronted with a challenge, your whole focus shifts on this challenge. So you get kind of this tunnel vision, like, okay, this is my new reality. It sucks. It's painful. It hurts. Like you have no additional processing space for seeing beyond this challenge. And what happened in my case on the bike when I was in this moment is actually that an ambulance passed by. That was like from my hospital. And so I had this reminder of like, wait, like 3 months ago, I was fighting for my life. And now I just fight for a triathlon. So what's the problem? So it gave me the possibility to see the challenge or the obstacle in relation to bigger challenges or problems. And that was like giving me a kind of ease. It was giving me a kind of a perspective. So we have to understand, so this has nothing to do with my triathlon, or this is how the mind is wired. We always see things in relation to others. And we always see, if we just focus, let's take the actual situation, COVID.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we are in this tunnel. Like, okay, this is a pandemic. It's huge, especially the whole impact on the economy, and we will have a lot of long-term effects. Yes, it is. But if you put it into relation to other problems, let's say, what if this would have happened 50 years ago or 60 years ago? Or, you know, like you live in a country, I don't know where people are from watching this, but I assume when you have a computer, so you're living in a civilized world, that you also have access to some kind of healthcare system. Like, what if you live in a place you don't have access? So putting it in perspective always gives you a kind of the obstacle gets, how should I say, it's not getting smaller, but it's maybe easier for you to tackle it.
Yeah, I mean, that part, that kind of led me to the next question is, how do we replicate it in this crisis? So where do we need to go? Because I know I've watched another one of your videos where you talk about the 3 kind of big challenges at the moment, and they being like financial and obviously health, and then even relationship, you call it love. And so these challenges, and so what, obviously part of it is you're saying we need, the first step essentially is to get this perspective, to really kind of stand back from it, see it for what it is. And obviously through that perspective that you got on your bike, you were able to overcome this mass, which was still a big, I mean, you were going through pain. Your mind was yelling at you saying, stop, come on, Martin, you've done enough, well done. And you're obviously, you've got that perspective to continue to go through it.
I think what you can do in this kind of a hack is you can tell yourself, look, it could be worse. And it always could be worse. And when you're on a bike and you have pain in your legs and you're tired, then you can say, look, it could be worse because other people at this moment are fighting for their life. And the same when it comes to health, to love, or to your job. You can always, and it's not about negative visualization. It has nothing to do with that. It's just like putting in perspective, say, wait, okay, maybe my health is not where I want it to be, but what do I actually have? What are my starting points? What can I build on? You know, like it could be worse. And so this, like, use it as to motivate yourself, and then shift the focus, like, okay, what's the smallest step that you can do today? Yeah. Like, I mean it literally, like, what can you do today? And we always think like, oh, okay, no, you have to run a triathlon and you have to make, no, you don't. You really don't. The only thing you have to ask yourself, what can you do today that you are a bit further like towards your goal than yesterday? And if you do this every day, then you, in the end, you're crossing the finish line before you know it.
Is this, I mean, for someone like yourself, is this a program where you'll say, okay, every morning I have a morning routine and I'm going through these motions? Is it, so how programmed is this sort of perspective in your world?
It is programmed, but I'm not strict of having every day exact the same. Yeah. So what I do every day is meditation in the morning. And I do a lot in the morning. I start to do yoga, as I learned it improves my running, which is really interesting. And so, but I don't do it every morning. I know when I do it, I feel better, but sometimes I have a meeting, I have a call, I don't have time. You know, we are all humans. So then I don't do it and I regret it. But it is about, when it comes to habits or improving your life, it really is about focusing on the process and not the result. Like don't think about the result. The result will come. Like as long as you focus on the process and having fun in the process, that's really important, because otherwise you do it 5 days and after 5 days you give it up. Like to find this, like, okay, this is actually fun, I want to do it tomorrow again.
That's one of the questions I had for you was this part to say, like, obviously say a person wants to lose weight, and we see a lot of people, obviously the focus is on the scales, the focus is on the outcome. And I was going to ask you, but you've just jumped in there, and I'll say, okay, in terms of percentage for you, the person, but you, the neuroscientist, how much should we be focusing on the outcome, and how much should we be focusing on actually the actions that lead us to that? And you've just
trashed the scale. Like the scale, because the scale is a problem when it comes to fitness and health, that you have to put in a lot of work and the response is very delayed. So you have a very long bridge of, you have to change a lot and you don't feel it or you don't visualize it on the scale. So trash the scale, rather like buy some running shoes or I don't know, headphones so you can dance at home or whatever is like fun for you, and focus on something that is healthy and that is fun, and focus on that. And in half a year, you're at the doctor's visit, a checkup or whatever, you will see that you have lost weight.
It's so classic when someone like yourself, I mean, you're a neuroscientist and I'm a nutritionist, and we talk about these same things. And obviously the trap is that we focus so much on a week to week, which I get people to look in terms of accountability and say, okay, how are we doing? Is the process working? But the problem that I see is that when it takes over, and sometimes we need to have that faith, that confidence to say, if we're doing the actions, then obviously we're gonna get where we need to be. So,
I mean, I think what is really helpful for some people, and I'm one of those person, is, and maybe that sounds counterintuitive when I say trash the scale, but it's like tracking what you do. And I found that very, very engaging. I'm not tracking, okay, how much weight do I lose? Because I know that will take a lot of time, but I track nearly every sports activity that I do. And it helps me to stay motivated. I know exactly how many hours I was swimming last month, or how much I was hiking or running. And somehow it's kind of engaging for me to have this visualized in an app or somewhere, and I see, oh, actually I'm improving from week to week. So, but again, there is not a solution for everyone. Like it's very individual.
There is that individuality to a lot of things, and how we think. I mean, when you're working with a person, different mindsets, how much do you feel like this person is just totally, you've got to change tack, and they're taking on feedback in a different way. How often do you see yourself, like, do you have formulas for certain people, or do you just basically, when you're coaching a person, say they're trying to, whether, I know you do a lot of business coaching and those sort of things, do you actually you set markers for a person and then basically following them, or is it do you have a formula? That's what I'm trying to say.
I think every person needs another kind of approach, but there are certain kind of techniques and like that you can use. First of all, I think it's very key, like, why you want to do something, why do you want to change something, like what is your motivation, is really the driving force that helps. So having a good reason why you want to change something in your life is definitely going to help you. Then focus, that's like, really, focus is not natural. We focus on the wrong things, and like getting a sensitivity for shifting your focus, that's a skill everybody can learn. So that's definitely something that I'm working a lot with my clients. And then, I mean, I think the biggest not mistake, but the obstacle we have in achieving our goal is fear. That we think we should not have any fear. And I, as a neuroscientist, say that's completely unrealistic. Like, fear is the oldest circuit in our brain. Like, because of that circuit, we are here. Because of that circuit, our ancestors were not like gotten killed in the jungle. So it's so archaic, like old in our mind, that it's not about losing your fear. It's about learning to live with it and learning to hold that feeling of like, oh, it's not nice. It's like, that sucks, but I can still do it. And if you master this, I mean, then you can overcome so many obstacles.
It's great. In your videos, you talk about this fear. I was going to ask you about that, and you talk about that as the gorilla, right? You give it this picture, and it's how can you work with the gorilla and even kind of embrace the gorilla, accept the gorilla being there, which is a great analogy. Can you talk about, because what part of that, your TED talk, when you show the part where the gorilla walks through, and then no one sees, or like we say 40, 50% of people don't see. So if I set the scene, there's people throwing a ball at each other. And some people have tried this test. And suddenly a gorilla walks through, dances around and kind of walks out. And they ask people and say, did you see the gorilla? And what, 40% or something says, no, I didn't see a gorilla. And then you record it, or then you rewind it and show it, and you're like, oh my God, there's a gorilla there. And this is about, in terms of what you're talking about, your focus. This is about
it's called, the phenomena is called attentional blindness. Yeah. So we are blind to things we don't pay attention to. It's just an optimization process of the brain, because we don't have enough energy resources to pay attention to everything. So, like, metaphorically speaking, we just focus on what we pay attention to. And so everything we don't pay attention, it's just out of our focus. It's not even getting into our perception. I mean, I can give you an example, like also the people at home, you can try this now when you're at home. Like, look in your room, look around, and I give you 10 seconds. And now try to memorize as many blue things. I have blue, so I take blue, but you can take another color. Let's take blue. As many blue things. I give you 10 seconds, like, that you memorize. And then after that, we're going to see how many you memorize. So another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now close your eyes. Close your eyes. And now tell me, like, we're going to write a list in our mind, and you tell me how many things have you seen in your room that are green. And just try to list mentally, like, what is green in your room. I give you another 3, 4 seconds, maybe 2. Like, what is green in your room? And now open your eyes and look around. Like, what is green? Like, this is attentional blindness. You're probably going to see now more green stuff that you are not aware of, and that is your focus is like this, you know. You don't perceive the whole picture. And that's the funny thing, the same is like when it comes to your health, your love, and your job, because you have a tendency to just see the negative things. You don't see the green, the positive. And so you're always like, oh, I should have go running. Oh, I should have done that. No, I mean, think about what you already achieved. Like, what have you done? It's a very similar mechanism.
That's awesome. When you spoke, I mean, if we stay on this focus, you spoke about there's some skills. So this would be one skill that possibly even a person could regularly do. But say when we talk about shifting your focus, do you have some more skills or actions or something that can help a person shift their focus?
Yes, like with every skill, it's a matter of practice. Okay. Like you have the first thing is to become aware that if you have only blue in your mind, that this is not the full picture. Yeah. So a lot of people don't even know that. They think, oh, I just focus on blue, so the whole world is blue. No, there is also green. So you have to become aware that the input is not like representing reality. And then it's really a matter of practice, of like when you observe the story in your head, like telling you, okay, the the obstacle is too big, I'm negative, all the reasons why you cannot overcome it, then question yourself, do I put the focus on the right, like, perspective? Do I focus on the positive, or do I focus on the obstacle? Like, do I focus on what I can do or not? So it's really, I mean, to practice this, just ask yourself a better question. That's a good thing to start with. Like, don't ask yourself, why is Corona here? Or like, ask yourself, what can you do with it? Like ask a better question, and then, yeah.
It's so, I mean, it's one of those things that's so simple, and we've heard it all before. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, and I'll even say myself, where we get caught up in this world and we think about, oh my God, like, I got the kids and I've got to organize them and I've got all these things.
Yeah.
And instead of actually going to the word like how, it's like, instead of the bad why is this happening to me? Why is this world? It's actually this how. The quote of the quality of your questions gives an outcome of the quality of your life.
Yeah.
I really, I resonate with it. I think that's great. I think,
and the same thing is like what you consider as a problem, like choose your problems. And the quality of your problem is directly correlated with the quality of your life. Like, if it's a problem that it's raining, well, then your quality, I mean, it's like consider, is it really a problem, or is it just the weather? And if you pick your problem, and by picking what you think is a problem or not, you will choose the quality of your life. That's
awesome. It just took me to my survival story, and the stories in there, and some of the stories where people shared about their experiences with cancer and obviously overcoming cancer. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, I was really moved, especially, I mean, they were all very moving, but about this common thread of hope. And there was one of the guys there, Greg, who said, kind of, lose hope and the world's a scary place.
Yeah.
When you talk about these problems, in terms of how big, in your opinion, is this hope? Do you see it as a massive thread of successful people, having looked at all these people suffering from, like, overcoming cancer? How big is that for you?
Like, how big is the topic of hope? Or?
Yeah, in terms of what, how often, like, did you see this word? Like, I looked at maybe 3 or 4 today of the survival stories. And one of the things that really kind of resonated and kept coming up was when they're in this world of going through the emotions, as you described it yourself, is like you had 3 bad days. You talk about, like, really kind of hitting rock bottom and thinking, oh my God, look at my world. And then there's these moments, and this is what I'm trying to kind of get at for those people feeling like it's like this. They found something to give them the hope, and they held on to this hope that kind of drew them out. And that was that quote, like, Greg kind of summarized quite a few of the stories. He was like, I noticed when we lose hope, like, this fear just overtakes. And my question to you was, when you've gone through this and when you've been with people and talked with people, how big and what are the ways to get into hope? Just to say, I'll be hopeful, that's pretty empty. But yeah, what are your thoughts on hope?
Well, I think I want to first point out, and I consider this is very, very important, that it's very human to lose hope. And also me, and I mean, I'm like, let's say you see my TED Talk and doing marathon, and it seems like, this guy is just everything in order. It's like, no, I also had my moments, and not only 3 days, I had like 3 weeks and 3 months of losing hope. And I think we should allow that, to have a moment of losing hope and have a moment of, like, saying, oh, now it's just too much, like, I cannot handle it. It's not where we want to stay for the rest of our life. But if we put on too much pressure and say, yeah, you have to find hope, you have to stay positive, and I'm not sure if this is the right approach. It's like there is an African saying, like, the grass isn't growing faster if you pull it, you know. So you're just going to break somebody. It's like saying you have to stay positive. And so it's okay to lose hope. Now, coming back to your question, how you get out of the hole, how you get out of this moment. This is something that worked for me and for a lot of people I interviewed very well. And I think if you spend some time on thinking about it, it could also work for you. It's like, if you're facing a challenge, try to find somebody in a very similar situation 2 or 3 years ago and had to face very similar. And I mean, there are a lot of people out there sharing their stories online, and like find a role model that is close enough to your situation that somehow inspires you how this person was doing it. You know, like find, because a person compared to theory and knowledge and we know what we should do, a person is like an exemplification of a possibility that it's actually possible to overcome. It's possible to overcome depression. It's possible to overcome overweight. It's possible, like these are all normal humans, but somehow they managed. So it means there is a possibility. Yeah. And so that I think has a really strong power. Like if you, and this maybe needs a bit of research and like Googling around until you find somebody that fits your challenge or your obstacle or your situation, but that could really trigger a spark of hope.
I think that's perfect. I mean, one of the questions, it was that question of hope was loaded, because what I've heard from you constantly is this humanness to say, like, we can lose hope and it's okay. We can be in the moment and we shift. Like you say, I've had 3 days where I've really, like, I've been in the depths, and we all have. And it's this acceptance, and it's great for you to obviously acknowledge that, how much you've been through, and to say, do you know what? Yeah, okay. It's not all like, yeah, I've got cancer, now I'm going to do a triathlon. Now I've got this, and I'm going to take on the world. It's like, I had some crappy days, and it was just how I then allowed that to be what it was, and then it shifted, and it shifted for different reasons. Now that's awesome. I wanted to ask you, in terms of the survival stories, and what stood out for you this whole experience as something personal. What, like, obviously you're going around meeting all these people. Did someone's story really resonate with you? We talk about mentors, like you've just talked about, like finding a mentor, finding a role model, which for me, I totally agree with. Like this education system, one of the best things I think is just finding a role model who's doing what you want to do and follow them. Who inspired you? Who motivated you? Who was, like, something personal from your side?
Well, obviously you hear a lot of stories and a lot of very touching and inspiring stories, but one story in particular was touching me a lot. It was from Julia Dharmalingam, I think. I'm not sure if I pronounce her name correctly. She's a 89-year-old lady in Malaysia. Okay. And we started the video that she had a little booklet, like telling us like what's her medical history. And so she had like all these dates, and she's reading through the list from 1971 until 2014. And in this time, she had like 5 different cancer diagnoses, like 5 different types of cancer. And then she closes the book and she smiles at us and says, yeah, that's all. And we are just like, what? Like, and that was the moment for me where I was like, oh wow, this is like how does she manage to get to this point of like having so much fallback, so much struggle, and still having a smile on her face? So what I learned from her is it has all to do with acceptance. And like coming back to the obstacle topic of this webinar, is like, once you accept that you have a challenge, you already made the first step. And like, this is really what I learned from her. You have to accept what you cannot change, like, because you just lose energy if you go against it, and then you have to focus on what you actually can do.
And there's so many metaphors, isn't there, about that? Just like the tide coming in and you can't fight it, and you've just got to let go and just go with it. That's powerful. But I think,
and also that not every bad news is like meaning that you're going to die, or, you know, like put it in perspective. Like, okay, she got a lot of bad news in her life, but still she's walking strong.
But even going on that, where you talk about, and hearing it from other stories about, one of the questions, did cancer, was it such a negative experience? And a couple said this actually was life-changing. They looked at the problem now that was insurmountable, was so great, but they changed their life accordingly. And so sometimes maybe we don't know why we get drawn those cards. And again, it goes back to you saying sometimes we've got to accept and have maybe, I mean, what about faith? How much has faith been a part of your world? So we've got hope, but faith is a different thing. Like,
yeah, I have a very strong faith. I'm not classical religious. I grew up as a Catholic in my family in Switzerland, but I consider myself as a very spiritual person. Yeah. Despite I studied biology, but I think it's really magic in nature, and I have a big faith in that. And I think faith has a lot to do with like activating your fire. Like, do you believe in the possibility that doesn't mean that it has to materialize, you know, but when I signed up for my triathlon, I had faith that there is at least a possibility I can do that. Yeah. And so that was really important for me to find the drive to go through it and go through training. Yes.
Yeah. So I want to shift. So we've talked in terms of, I think it's amazing, like in terms of the overcoming the obstacles component here and what you've given about perspective. And we've talked obviously faith and hope and what you're focused on and shifting that perspective. But to talk a little bit about a person who's changing some of those habits now. And I wanted to ask your opinion about somebody who I've read his book recently. And I like his work. He's very full on. I don't know if you've heard of a guy called David Goggins.
I know who he is, but I didn't read his book yet.
Okay. He's got a book called Can't Hurt Me. He's like that they call the toughest guy on the planet. He's done SEAL training and every training and run marathons and done everything. And he says that he believes that most of us will only ever reach 40% of our potential. And that he calls motivation crap. And that success is about being driven to the point of being just about obsessed. And you can see it when you hear him interview. I mean, he's very full on, he's very strong. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts about this, first of all, this 40% potential?
I definitely think that we are just at the top of the iceberg of what our potential is. And I also observed that 90% of people believe of themselves that they are the top of the iceberg and not like what else they don't see it. I see that in my coachings, I see that in my workshops. Like, I see myself, like, I just became who I am today because of like the whole story I had to go through. So so in this sense, if it's 40 or 60 or 70, I'm not a numbers guy when it comes to the body. So, but I definitely agree with him that we have much more potential than we think we are. I mean, you know, I sometimes in my workshops, I ask people like, okay, I can also ask here in the webinar, like when we finish this webinar, who of you would be ready after this webinar to go out and run a marathon? And ask yourself the question, like, you can drink some water, no food, just like we go, like ask yourself, okay, how would that be? Now, probably a lot of people would like think, oh, that's quite a task. I'm not sure about it. Like, I never run a marathon or it's so long. Now, if I turn the question and say, imagine you have the ultimate vaccination for COVID and you're the only person you have it, that you have to bring it to the hospital where they can like amplify it or bring it to the whole humanity, and you have to run this marathon to do that. Like, would you be I mean, I'm not saying how fast you have to run. It probably would be very hurtful experience, but somehow, or think about saving somebody's life that you love, you know, suddenly you would click into a mode of like, yeah, of course I'm gonna do that. Of course, if I have to save my wife or my kid or whoever, like, yes, I would be able to find the strengths within me. And so when it comes to this 40%, yes, I think it's just because we are not pushed anymore to this like, okay, extreme situations where we have the ability to show the full potential.
I think it's great. Like when in Dubai and the retreat, and we talked about even things like some of the guys doing Wim Hof and climbing the mountain in their underwear and seeing the potential and saying, hey, wow, it's amazing. We can go into these cold areas, or we can do this if using breathing, but there's also obviously the mindset really runs the show in terms of our potential.
Yes, because you tell yourself, oh, no, I'm tired. And you tell yourself, oh, no, I'm hungry, or I'm thirsty. And that's in the end the story you tell yourself. Like, if you can change the story you tell yourself and really stick to that story, you're able to change your behavior. So what happens often is that when it gets hard, we hear this inner voice of like, now it's getting hard, I give up. And as long as we understand, hey, wait, this is just a story, like maybe it's not like how much energy I have left in my body, then you actually can change something.
Yeah, and the potential that we have, like you say, I mean, I think a lot of people have known this themselves, where they said, depending on this situation, what I've done, and then you look back and you go, oh my God, how did I do that? It was just you needed to. There was a desire, and like you said at the start, and this is where I also wanted to delve into the habits, and we've talked about this in the past, was in terms of a process of a person changing their behavior, the why, like for me, and it sounds like for you too, really sits in the middle. It's like if you don't have a compelling reason, right, your chances of success kind of go down. Is that where you're really your first, when you're working with a person, you're really trying to get an understanding of their why and really amplify it?
Yes, we definitely go into it and try to understand why they want to change something. But depending on what the problem is or what people want to do, we focus on other areas. What I think is also really important when you want to change a habit or behavior is environment and finding positive reinforcement. And I think they are definitely underestimated, these 2 points.
Can you go further with environment?
Yeah, so I give you a personal example. Like last Christmas, I was at Phuket Cleanse. So when you go to a retreat, what is wonderful is suddenly you come to a new environment. There is a cook that cooks amazing fresh food. It's very healthy. So you have no temptations of a fridge at home. You know, like the whole environment is designed to make it very easy for your brain. So what happened? I didn't lose so much kilo, but I mean, I don't, it's not my goal, but I became much leaner. So when I came home from town, I was like, I think I never before I was so lean and I felt amazing. Yeah. And so what happens? I come home, I live in Switzerland. So, you know, when you go to a grocery store in Switzerland, you have this full wall of chocolates and it runs in our genes. And so, of course, like in the beginning, I think I had 2 weeks without sugar in Switzerland, which is like crazy for me that I don't eat sugar for 2 weeks. But then after 2 weeks, you got invited and they have this lovely chocolate cake and the environment starts to push you back, you know, like it's hard for your brain to say no. So if you want to change something, like try to change the environment. I mean, at least what you can change, make it as easy as possible for your brain, because your brain is not very good when it comes to temptations.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you then this question.
Yes.
On that, because I really like this. If you were your coach and,
yes.
You've just come from, say, Phuket Cleanse, and you've just been off sugar for a while, you're feeling awesome. Yeah. You kind of know what the world, the environment looks like when you get back home.
Yes.
What are you going to, and you have a why, you want to stay as lean as possible. You want to keep the energy. Yeah. You want to feel great.
Yes.
You know these temptations are there. what would you be telling yourself as the coach? Or what would you put in place to see if you could hold that environment or those circumstances as much as possible in your new environment or the original one?
Yes. So the first thing I would tell myself, which I also did and I tried, is like to trash all the sweets again out. Okay. Like be a radical, like that if I don't have it at home, then I don't are tempted to eat it.
That's a good point.
But then comes the next problem. Okay, I have to go shopping. So I walk into the shop and I say, okay, I want to have avocados, I want to have veggies, you know, all the good stuff, fruits. And then you walk through the grocery store and you pass by the alley with the chocolate. Then you know what happens? Like you go and okay, just take one. And so the third thing I was thinking, okay, then I have to make online shopping, because when I'm at home on my computer and I'm not in front of the shelf, then maybe I can resist the temptation. So I tried to do that, but then because of COVID, all the online shops were like booked out for 6 weeks. Like, oh no, it doesn't work. Like, yes, we had like waiting lines in the online delivery shops. And so now what I would tell me, and that's where I'm now, is that I say, okay, it seems like you have a problem with, like, you want to eat less chocolate, but you still buy chocolate and you do it. So I increased the quality of the chocolate. I mean, the quality of chocolate is already very good in Switzerland, but now I'm at like just chocolate that has at least 90% of cacao, which is like I'm reducing the sugar level in the chocolate. And so I try to desensitize like my habit of eating super sweet, unhealthy, sugary stuff, but like moving more and more to 100% chocolate. And then maybe I can give it up at one point.
Yeah.
But it's tricky. It's very tricky.
I mean, it's the big challenge, isn't it? I mean, this is what everybody, even on those levels, I know the clients that I'm working with are facing those challenges every day. And I think, like you say, the old substitution, and that's what you're doing. Yeah. You're saying, okay, here's a milk chocolate with this much, how many grams of sugar, and I'm going for the darker one, and I'm going to substitute and work that way. It's completely valid. It's a and
then the next step would be like that I say, okay, I'm going to substitute the chocolate with, like, I love mangoes. And in Switzerland, mangoes are not like a commodity, you know? So it's a bit pricey, or if you want a fresh, good mangoes, and I say, okay, that's a kind of a luxury, but I know it's really good. It's really healthy. I love it. I feel like as satisfied as if I eat chocolate. So I move like more and more into products that are like more healthy and still having a satisfaction level, because that's what happens in a retreat. The food is so good. It's healthy, but it's so good. But at home, I don't know how to do that, you know? And so I substitute again with the unhealthy, tasty stuff, because when I eat or cook healthy, it's not tasty. So
yeah, no, that's that. I mean, it is, again, it's like you say, the environment's a massive part, and I suppose for a lot of people, it's a great kickoff too. So if you're really kind of struggling, suddenly you get thrown, and we see it all the time. A person in these new places, it's like, it's easier. And you can get into these habits and start that. But obviously it's the reintegration, which is the challenge. It's like, I'm going back to my old environment. So if we take that further then, so you said two things. You talked about obviously the environment, and the second one you talked about were the rewards. So how do you play this rewards game?
So by positive reinforcement, I mean that if you try to build a new habit, you have to tell your brain that what you just did is good. And you should not tell it with a chocolate or a cookie. So that's a very bad reward. So when it comes to let's say physical activity, movement, or it can also be something at your work. You have to make a phone call you don't want to do, like you just want to overcome it. When you do it, give yourself a compliment. And it sounds stupid, but you know, it is not stupid. Like I started to tell myself, well done, Martin. And you can even, like, you can try it at home. Like you can take your arm, you can like do like this, show me, and then you bend it like that it's over your shoulder, and then you make like this.
It's nice.
And the funny thing is, when I do this in workshops, like 90% of the people start laughing.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. You want the smile. You want the positive, like, body feeling. You want to tell your system what you just did is good, more. It's like when a kid learns to bike. You say, yeah, go, more, and you clap.
Yeah.
And so try it out. Like when you do something, when you say, okay, I want to go running, take your shoes, walk once around the house. I know it sounds stupid, but it's not. Walk once around the house and then say, well done. And you will laugh, and probably you will walk further than once around the house. And so you tell your brain, okay, this is good. Do more of it, do more of it. And so that's what I mean with positive reinforcement.
That's awesome. It's great. There was, I remember seeing one of the other guys, practitioners at Phuket Cleanse, and he did a little Charlie Chaplin, like jumping the things.
Tommy, yes.
And I'm laughing. And he said, that was positive reinforcement. I got that from Matt.
Yes. Exactly.
That's great. And you see it. You see his whole physiology. And that's what when we had a chat, I was talking to you because I was creating in terms of the habits. And one of the biggest things was, you said, obviously, emotion is a driver. Emotion is a driver for learning. And you could see him when he went to this little like jump in the air and the feet go together, and you could see this smile like, oh, the fact that gives him so much joy. You could see he wants to do it again. He wants to, I think that's such a misunderstood thing, because like you say, you kind of think, oh, what's this and that, but
stupid.
Get into it. Like I see with the kids, like the kids get, as a parent, oftentimes it's like, oh, you did well, have a chocolate, you did well on this. And you have to really be wary, what reinforcement, and how can we reinforce in a way that actually is very positive. And I think that's great. When I said, I love that idea.
Try to think about for yourself, like, how do you want positively reinforce yourself? There could be a gesture that, like, you probably know Boris Becker, German tennis player, you know, like he had always the Becker Faust, like always. And that was his thing. Like a lot of sports people have a kind of a typical celebration gesture, like some football players. Exactly. And so, and you don't have to show that anybody or tell anybody, like do it for yourself, because in the beginning you will feel a bit stupid when you do it. I know I'm talking from experience, like, but after a while, I'm like, even in public or so, I'm saying, yeah, well done, Martin. And I think it's a really nice gesture. And emotions are really driving learning, and it goes in both directions. So positive and negative, like negative emotions and fear can also be very strong learner. Like when you first as a kid touch the hot cooking stove or a pan, then you do it once and then you learned it. So it goes in both directions.
Yeah, that's I mean, that when we spoke about that, and you highlighted that it's not just the positive, like any sign to get in terms of those emotions for learning. I want to say to anybody who's listening at the moment, if you wanted to put any questions for Martin in the chat box. I know, Martin, you have to go. You've got another thing coming up soon, but I'm going to I
think there is a question.
Yeah, I was going to. Can you see it? I was going to read it to you from Mater.
I cannot see it.
Okay, I'm gonna read it to you, and it's from Mater. With your experience, Martin, in neuroscience, how do adolescents manage to change some behaviours due to depression, for example? On top of everything else, they're dealing with hormones and full-time brain development going on. It seems that an extraordinary effort is required.
And extraordinarily, the last word I didn't...
is required.
Epic or ethics?
Effort. A lot of effort.
Yes.
Like they really need to work hard to change in terms of behaviors. So there's a lot. So for the adolescent, there's so much going on. They've got hormones, they've got their brain experience, and there's so much working on. How do we help them change their behaviors? And especially when it's like from depression.
Well, we have to understand that when you have a depression, like a serious depression, your brain is flooded with hormones and with neurotransmitter that you don't want, or you have from some types you have not enough. So you have a big disequilibrium of like how the system should work than normally. And so in some cases, it's possible to calibrate that with medication. I would be very cautious with doing that because you have long-term side effects, you have dependencies, but it could be a possibility, but that has to be checked by a professional. Another thing that you can do, and that has to be proven to be very successful, again, it's not a one solution fits all, is to work with learning to shift attention. And like what happens when you're depressed, you see everything. First of all, you're very down. You have no energy. It's kind of very dumb. You see, you have a kind of a perception. The perception is very foggy. And so what people did in therapies is that, for example, when you take a glass of water, they made exercises, and of course the person has to be willing to try that out. It has to come from a person. Okay, I know I have a depression. I want to work on that. Is you take a glass and you take a sip of water and you really start to shift the full focus on the water, on like how does it feel on the lip. And by doing this exercise, that can be for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, your brain has actually no time to think, oh, I'm depressed now. So you learn the brain to relax and to shift attention to sensory inputs that you lost connection with. And so it's not only like, okay, here are the running shoes, go out and move your ass. No, it's also about helping the brain to get a break and to say, okay, how does it actually feel? And like, oh, how does it actually feels nice, you know, like, and shift the focus in this sense.
I think it's great. It's kind of mindfulness you're talking about.
Yes.
And
yes.
One of the therapies that I learned, ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, is about shifting that mindset. And there was great from Dr. Russ Harris, who was my teacher for this. And he showed an example with a young boy about sugar. And he said, he had this jelly snake, and he said to him, all right, here's a jelly snake. And before you eat it, what I want you to do is I want you to smell it and lick it. And people, I'm sure a lot of people have seen these mindful eating examples, but it's incredible to see the shift where when you're focused now on something new, you're not just thinking, I need the sugar, I need the sugar, I need the sugar. You're actually taking something into account, and it's a shift in the mindset. I see that point. Next question from Michelle, and she'd love to know how you get someone to have a positive mindset when they're struggling with grief.
Well, I think what I always speak out, and I want to start to answer the question with like positive mindset, because grief is a topic that sometimes I feel like, again, what I was saying before of losing hope, we should allow ourselves to grieve. I think it's natural, it's very human to grieve. Somebody passes away or something seriously happened. And so the last thing that I would recommend is to move too quickly and say, now you have to stay positive and move back. But obviously after a while, maybe you want to move on. Now, to jump to the first part of the question, positive mindset, I want to explain the difference between positive and negative emotions, and another kind of concept of categorizing our mental states is, I don't believe that it's very good to talk about positivity or negativity when it comes to emotions. I know it's common and everybody uses these terms, but I prefer to use the words like uncomfortable and comfortable emotions. And so we are having a tendency to say, okay, I want to have comfortable emotions. I want to have a positive outlook, positive emotion. And we are avoiding uncomfortable emotions. But just because they are uncomfortable, they're not negative. Okay, so every emotion has a function. Anger has a function, grief has a function, sadness has a function. It's just, it doesn't feel nice. And because it doesn't feel nice, we get ashamed, we want to get rid of it, we want to like say, okay, that has no place in my life. And I don't think that's good. I think just because they're uncomfortable, It doesn't mean that we have to push them out. It means we have to learn to sit in the uncomfortable emotion. I'm not saying sit forever, but like to hold it and say, hey, look, it is part of life to grieve. And you can be sad and it's okay. That doesn't mean that you have to stay like this forever, but it's totally normal. And at one point you will move on, and it's okay. So I would say to give people like the time they need, and to understand that also optimists can be sad. You know, we think like, I'm an optimist and I'm crying. So, and that's fine. You know, a pessimist is somebody who believes no way, it's only going to get worse and it's the end of the world. An optimist says, no, I believe that after my grief, I will be better. Maybe it's in a month, maybe in a year, but I believe that. But that doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to cry right now. So I think that's maybe helpful. I don't know if this was answering the question of like putting it into perspective.
I think it is. I mean, from what I've taken from the question and your response, I think it is great to shed light on this positive and negative. And again, I think a theme that you've been sharing with us today is about the normalness of some of these emotions and the acceptance. And I think not to push them out and say, oh, I can't have it. It's even like, I think it was David Goggins even who said, like, being comfortable in the uncomfortable. And I suppose this, again, if there's a theme today, it is about acceptance. And Michelle says, yeah, no, very helpful. And she loves the term uncomfortable. So it worked well. And for me, I resonate with that.
It's also for you, Michelle, it's a sign of like how much you love the person, you know. And if you say I'm now grief and that's negative, and it gives a taxation on it that maybe not represents what it from a quality point of view should represent.
Yeah, no, that's great. I just want to ask anyone if anybody else has any questions. I'll just check the other for Martin. I know Martin's got to leave and we'll be finishing up soon, but if there's any last questions for Martin, just please put them in the box. I know for me it's great, and it's always great talking to you. You're I think the beauty, like when I read the introduction, you're a very knowledgeable guy. You know your stuff, but you're the sort of guy, you're just so down to earth and open, and you've got an openness and a curiosity to say, okay, that's in the textbook, that's in the knowledge, but we humans, like, there's a lot going on. And you often say in your talks, I've seen you say, we don't know that much still about this brain. We don't know that much about this. And you've studied it for how many years? And it's like, yeah, we just on the surface. And I think it's really great. And obviously that part where what you've been through to say acceptance, that the first step is really kind of listening to yourself and accepting. And Major said she lives in Zurich and she's going to reach out and
grüezi miteinander.
So unless there's any other questions, I'm going to wrap
I think
up.
There is another question, the Q&A, but I cannot see that.
There's another one's coming. Yep, let me go there. From Nadia, just a big thank you. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. Wait, I think I know you've got to go. From Freddie, not a question, just another thank you. Really interesting.
Thank you, guys.
Enjoyed. So I'm going to say thank you on my side, mate. It is great to see you. I hope we're going to see you out in Phuket soon. It was so much fun having you.
Me too.
We're going to have you back, and just to spend time with you. Really appreciate you. Obviously, what your story is, and I'll leave some links, and I do recommend check out Martin's work, please. I see you did a YouTube video so you're putting out a lot of content, and you've got My Survival Story, which is just such an amazing
Well,
inspirational site and what you're doing. So I thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. And as I said before, it's also, I think, so wonderful that technology allows us to keep be connected in this very special moment of life. Yes.
Exactly, right now. That's awesome. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, or to whatever time it is for you out there. Yeah. And thanks for sharing and coming along. So wish you all well, as they keep saying.
Thank you so much.
Stay safe, and all the best to everybody.
Thank you so much. Take care. Cheers. Bye bye.